Hello, and welcome to the Coaches Corner, brought to you by the Endurance Lab, where the coaches from the lab recap the week and answer a couple questions from the forum. My name's Jason Flores, one of the Endurance Lab coaches, and today I'm joined by coaches Taya Friested and Ian Murray. Our other two coaches are out, but we've got the cream of the crop. We're here to bring you the Coaches Corner. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
All right. So Taya was saying that she was upset that we didn't find out what was going on with the coaches this week. So we're going to do a quick recap of how our weeks are going. I'll go ahead and get started. It's been a crazy week here at the house. We are looking to sell the pain cave, sell the house here, and move to a tiny pain cave. I don't know if that makes it worse or better, but I am in search for a new pain cave. So if you have a place where I could go and ride my bike several hours a week, let me know. So it's been pretty crazy on that sense. So Ian, what's been going on with you this week?
It's a pseudo race week. I'm racing a sprint try this weekend to knock off the rust, and I was more or less obligated to do it. So yeah, I was more or less forced to do it. So I've been taking, I wouldn't say necessarily a light week. It's still going to be about a 700 TSS week, but I've definitely dialed it back a little bit. Work's also helped dial it back as I've had some really late nights this week. So it's a bit of a crazy week too. Plus, like you, Jason, I am getting ready to move. So
that's right.
So my move will be an international move. So that's a whole lot more trying to find a place and online. And it's interesting.
For those that don't know the distances, what are the distances of your sprint triathlon?
Oh, it's a short one. It's like a 750 meter swim, a 20K bike, and a 5K run. So I should be done about an hour.
That's nuts. All right. Taya, has the ice melted? Have you been able to ride outside? What's going on over there?
So unlike both of you, I've been having a pretty easy week, at least in terms of cycling. It's been a rest week, and finally the weather is nice here. So I was able to go outside. I did my workouts outside because during a rest week, the workouts aren't as complicated or long.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been great. The one thing is the first time I went outside, I got a flat tire after such a long time. So I had the chance. That's right. Hey, it was ridiculous. I was like, boy, I'm going outside for the first time in a long time. And as I was in the garage getting ready to get out, I thought, what if I get a flat tire? And sure enough, I did. I didn't realize it was a flat tire at first. And I remember going downhill and thinking, gosh, my bike is all over the place. I've been inside too long. I can't even keep my bike straight.
Mother Nature
but you fixed it,
I'll
right?
show you.
I fixed it myself. A couple of riders were going by and, hey, you need help? I got it. I got this.
Nice.
And I proudly changed my own tire. Yes.
You're like, listen to our podcast though. All right. Well, it's definitely exciting on all three trips here. I know our coach, Mitch Dingerman, we haven't heard from him in a couple weeks. He's actually in physical therapy, getting his shoulders bionic and strengthened. I don't know if that's going to help him ride his bike better, but it's probably going to give him a good excuse for why he can't swim very quickly. So
well,
we'll see.
you know, when you save a burning bus of children, you lift it up and pull it back off the cliff, you might throw your shoulder out of whack. So, you know,
that is exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. It was right after he hit something and flipped over his bike and then fell on his shoulder. And then he got the kids out of the burning bus that we drove. That was it.
Right.
All right. Well, let's jump straight into this week in the lab. We're going to go right back to Ian, talking a little bit about our strength workouts and what's going on the multi-sport side of our lab. So take it away, Ian.
Well, you know, this week was a recovery week, so pretty much everything was fairly light. We've got a nice, easy, low heart rate run. We have this weekend a little bit longer run with some pickups to it, but overall it's fairly low intensity. On the swim side, we had our nice steady recovery ladder. So that's starting at 500, 500, then 4x100, 300, 2x100, 100, 2x50. So you just go down, and there's really not a ton of intensity to it, just a little bit. Just kind of keep you a little bit sharp. And then for strength side, we had pretty much our easy 15-minute core focused efforts, which again, we only had it in there one day, but I do encourage everyone to throw something core in there every day, even if it's only 5 to 10 minutes. But this week was really all about getting the body ready for the last 2 weeks of push.
Yeah, I did notice that, even the conversation in the forum kind of gets lively. People are starting to think about things outside of just our cycling workouts. And that's the great thing about having some time off or intensity off. You're not fatigued and you're not running yourself down. And that's really the purpose, to make sure that you can recharge yourself both physically and mentally for the week to come. We had a lot of good skills as far as the workouts this week, and we're going to talk a little bit about kind of deeper, but what workout specifically did we have this week that we're really focusing on that, Taya?
So we had a mixed pedaling drills to start off, and that was a mix of high cadence and low cadence, as well as single-legged drills. And like you said, Jason, this being a rest week on the bike as well, or recovery week rather, we had the chance, or our athletes had the chance to really focus on those skills and have time to think about areas that they have questions about or they can improve. So we go into more of that here shortly. And then we did a short VO2 workout, which was just enough to get tired. Some accelerations included in there with 1 minute intervals. And then we closed the week with the 12-4-3 time trial type workout, which works on starting as if you were doing a time trial, 12-minute blocks, starting hard, then settling in its sweet spot, and then finishing it strong.
Yeah, and that workout is deceivingly difficult. I know for those that do TTs, I know Ian's definitely into that game. Settling into that kind of spot of bother, as one of our commentators would say, can be very, very difficult to kind of mentally grasp, to get yourself to just be right on that ragged edge for, however long, that may be, so it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, it's definitely, it takes a lot of time to get used to, because your body starts telling you to shut down. Your body starts telling you to ease off. And the position's not the most comfortable position either. So you have to learn how to do it. It's an art and a skill to learn how to suffer.
Yeah, and then for those that are just on the cycling side and not in that position, which is the arrow position that Ian is talking about, this would be an example of possibly either, getting off the front and having a small gap and getting that just right amount of power, or potentially falling off the back of the group that you're on and trying to power up. Again, it's a conversation of putting the right amount of power out in order to do what you need to do. Often we find riders just putting it on the limit to either stay away from a group or to catch a group, when that amount of reserve of energy or power is limited. But if you are riding within your TT zone or right at your threshold, you'll be surprised on how much longer you'll go and how much longer you'll stay away if you're in that zone. So really use those numbers that we are using indoors, take them outdoors with your power meters, and get off the front or slightly off the back, and see how quickly you could actually reel people in by using the right powers, and then not be completely gassed when you do get back or get caught up or the group catches you or stay away longer. So
well, Jason, that's actually something we've covered a number of times in skills and drills, which we'll hit it back up when we pick back up in August, is that the concept of bridging is what you're talking about. And it's really important when you bridge. Bridging is doing battlefield calculus. You have to start figuring out how much faster is the group going ahead of you, or that got away, or how far are they? How much faster than them do you have to go to catch, taking into account the aerodynamics, taking into account the terrain and all of that. So it makes it really difficult because you're having to do this on the fly and you're having to guesstimate or swag it. But you can get really good at it, and you start learning, okay, if I know if I go this hard, I can pull them back over this amount of time. And that's well within that duration's power limit, so I can do it. Or I have to wait and go longer, or I know I can go harder and get it shorter because I know I have recovery once I catch up on the group. So there's a lot of things that you want to take into account with that. You want to catch a group, like for someone like me, I'm not going to worry about catching you on the flat if I know I can catch you on the climb. But if I know I have to catch you on that climb before we get over the top, then I'm going to have to push harder to catch you on that climb, because once you get over the top, you're gone.
Yeah, some really, really good points there. So really trying to calculate those, knowing your zones and knowing kind of what levels you need to ride. All right, let's jump into the hottest topic of this week in the lab. It's really about skills. It's what Taya had mentioned as far as, people having questions on. So let's talk a little bit about, left-right balance and kind of what people were feeling when they were forced to kind of push one side and the other, Taya.
So if you have a power meter that measures right and left power in your pedals, you're able to see in your ride report the difference between the two legs, right? So to use the technical term, the biomechanical symmetry in cycling. No one is completely balanced. We all have a dominant side. Absolutely. And this is not just for the legs, this is everything, right? Right hand, left hand, etc. What happens though on the bike is when you have a dominant side, the pelvis will twist to adjust for that imbalance. And then you're going to find that you might have some pain. Maybe it's one knee that hurts. Maybe it's one ankle that hurts. So again, going back to not everybody being symmetrical, a difference of about 1%, maybe 1.5% is not considered significant. And why should people, so maybe stepping back here, why should people care about imbalances? What ends up happening is there's some compensation. So for example, if your left quad is stronger than your right, then your right hamstring is going to be stronger to compensate for that. Over time, that can cause overuse injuries and lead to problems. So this is where it's good to be aware of that imbalance. And if it is a significant imbalance over, let's say 1%, 1.5%, to do something about it. Now, in terms of it, so it's really the goal is to avoid injuries. And then, of course, you have a smoother paddle stroke. But there is no science proving that asymmetry in the legs translates into a less efficient performance on the bike. So, and this is probably as a result of the fact that one leg compensates for the other one way or another, but also the danger there is because that can happen, you can just keep riding a long time with that imbalance. And so the bike will allow you for that to happen, right? So this is where it's good to be aware of it, and just there are some things that you can do to make it better and to reduce the imbalance that you have on left and right.
So for that difference that you were mentioning there, Tia, you're looking at 1.5%. You're looking at someone being, let's say, on the readings like 51 and 49, like that. Are those the small numbers that we're looking at, or we're looking for bigger numbers like 55 and 40?
We're certainly looking for bigger numbers.
Yeah.
So if you look at your numbers and you're even 52, 52, 48, it's okay. But if you're looking at something higher than that, then you should focus on correcting that imbalance. So I looked at, for example, my rides from about a year ago, and I had 46 and 54 for all pretty much around there for all the rides. And right now, I did it for this week when I was outside for purposes of the Coach's Corner here. I'm at 50.5 and 49.5.
Wow. And so from what I understand too, even at different ranges, for example, you take a rider riding tempo versus riding VO2 max, you can get differences in the symmetry as well. So like at a higher power rate, you may be even further apart, where you may be symmetrical in kind of a lower wattage. So it's important to kind of test and kind of look at yourself at different ranges as well.
Yeah, I just actually pulled up some of my old or some of my rides to see. And lately I've been like 42.5, 47, or 52.5, 47.5, right leg dominant. But it's funny, when I go back to that longer ride I did across the country here, my first probably 2/3 or actually first 100K, I was about that balance. And in the last 25K, especially where it got harder and I was having to push bigger watts, I was closer to like a 48.8 and a 51.2. So I think the bigger problems come in, like when Taya said, when you start having this big gap, or when over time you start seeing the gap grow bigger and bigger and bigger.
Exactly. Looking at the change over time. That's right.
So some of the things that you can do to correct the imbalance off the bike would be single leg exercises. Those can be either a balancing type exercise on a single leg or lunges. So for example, single leg press and lunges with a dumbbell or barbell, working always the weaker leg first. And the way that you could go about this is choosing a weight that will allow you to achieve 12 to 15 reps with good form. And you start with the weaker leg and see how many reps you can do using good form and keeping good form with the weaker leg. Then you switch to the other leg and you do the same amount of reps.
So you're talking like 80-pound dumbbells?
In your case. In my case, you know, the other thing is you might even start without any weight at all. You might start just by putting your hands in your waist and doing it that way, because you might find that it's not just the legs, it's also the glutes. So you might have an imbalance in your glute muscles that is giving you the imbalance on the bike. And by doing it, even without weight, just by keeping your balance and slowly going into the lunge, for example, and slowly going down towards the floor, you might notice. Another great test to do is stand up in front of a chair, face the back facing the chair. So you stand up and you pick one leg up and try to sit down with just one leg and see how well you can hold as
like
you sit down slowly.
Single leg squat?
Single leg squat, right. But you do it on a chair because you're testing it, right? And if you're not used to doing it, so then you do the right and the left leg, and you can tell there too if, you know, which side is weaker, and also you can tell that it might be your glute muscles that are not strong enough.
Yeah, and there's also, you know, how tight your hips are. I know for me, especially as I pick up my running, my hips tend to tighten up a little bit. So I think that's part of what I see when I look at my imbalance shifting from a 48.5 to a 47.5. I can usually find that point of going, okay, I picked up my running volume and my hips got a little tighter. So that's another thing to look at. There's a lot of factors actually.
Yeah. You don't want to have tight hips or uneven tight hips, Ian. You wouldn't want that.
Exactly.
Yeah, so good stretching for hips is the pigeon pose from yoga. You can Google that, and you can start doing the pigeon on your back. So supine pigeon. So you do it against the wall, and that's in the 15-minute core workouts is included in there. Not core workouts, excuse me, the stretching for cyclists video that we have in the YouTube channel. Yeah, but there are others that you can do as well for the hips. And you know, you can do these things. Sometimes you're watching TV, you just sit there, you know, in a funny position watching TV. You can do the same for your core. Just sit there in both position watching the news.
There you go.
It goes back to the free states not having any furniture in their house. It's all like balance balls and
that's right.
That's right. Rolling foam rollers and like TRX, this and that, and everyone's stretching in weird positions while they watch the news. Yeah, I like it.
One other thing I will mention is high cadence workouts on the bike. Of course, there's the single-legged drills, but the single-legged drills is more for, and we'll get into that in more detail here. The single-legged drills is more for dead spots and efficiency and smoothness of the pedal stroke, not to correct imbalances, because we're not focusing on power there. But high cadence is something that can really help too. I've been doing so much high cadence in the last year, and I think that is also a big contributor to correcting my imbalance. And we have those in the lab in the workouts. And what you can do too is at the end, as a part of the cool down, just throw in some high cadence intervals, 2, 3, 5 minutes, or even during a warm up if you can do a longer warm up. So the other topic here, going to the one-legged drills. We had some riders saying that they're having difficulty on the single-legged drills. For that one, again, not focusing on power. You're focusing on a smooth pedal stroke and applying power or force throughout the pedal stroke. If you think of it as a clock, you have 12 o'clock, 3, 6, and 9. As you go from 12 to 3, you're pushing your feet, your foot towards the front of the wheel. So that's where the force is going. As you go from 3 to 6, imagine yourself pushing your foot down as if you're sinking the heels into a mud bucket. And then from 6 o'clock to 9, this is where you act as if you were scraping mud off the heel and pull towards the back of the bike. And then from 9 o'clock to 12, this is typically where there's dead spots for pretty much everyone. You pull straight up with a flat foot on a pedal and focus on pulling straight up. So really you're applying force all throughout, and it takes time, and it doesn't look pretty at first. And depending on the trainer that you have, and I'll ask Ian and Jason to come in here, and depending on the trainer, you might not be able to unclip one leg and do the other leg. You might have to keep both on your pedals. But really, change, if you're finding that you have a lot of dead spots, maybe change your gears, going to an easier gear or a harder gear, so you can find a good resistance to be able to apply force throughout the pedal stroke. But it takes time and it takes practice. And you're going to have to use, especially from 6 o'clock to 12, this is typically where when you're pedaling with both legs, you have momentum. So you don't typically use your muscles as much from 6 to 12, but this is where the single-legged drills will work.
Yeah, and I think that, go ahead, Ian, you first.
All right, so I was using my kicker. I take a leg off all the time. I just kind of dangle it out to the side. But I think on every trainer I've used, I've been able to take it off, except, well, even on my rollers, I've done it. It's just a little sketchier until you learn to balance it. The only place I don't take my leg out really is when I'm on the road, or when I unclip is on the road. But I think for me, the biggest thing I learned when I started doing these years ago was you can feel it. It's going to feel awkward at first because you're going to have that herky-jerky motion where you're going to, when you lose that resistance, the pedal will jerk on you, or the crank arm will jerk. That's when you really need to sit there and focus on just a nice, slow, smooth pedal stroke. And you're not going to be doing this at 95 RPMs. It's going to be a much lower cadence, and just want to be nice and smooth. And you have to shift, like Taya said, you have to shift up and you have to shift down until you find that sweet spot of resistance, so you can then go ahead and do this. Now, there is a tool out there that certain people on Slow Twitch just advocate and love. It's called the power cranks, and you have to actually bring the pedals around, the crank arm around. They're not connected to each other. So when the bike is sitting there, they're both down in the 6 o'clock position.
That's nuts. That's nuts. I've heard this from my bike fitter. He's like, "Oh, Jason, you're like a numbers guy. You'll love this." And he like showed me it. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that drives me crazy." They have an apparatus like this for golf too. Like if you don't have like a super smooth golf swing, the whole golf, like the shaft just goes limp.
I would go nowhere on the golf course then.
So the same sort of situation with those power cranks. I guess it would be very, very popular in the tri world, just to get that kind of really smooth kind of motion. The key here is not so much the speed of the turn. It actually, in fact, is having that right resistance and power all throughout. So like Ian said, it may be at 80, it may be something lower, but it is going to be a lower cadence so that you have resistance. It is important. For those riders that I have had that haven't been able to or are not comfortable removing it, it takes a lot of intention to really just focus on one leg, pushing down, pulling up, pushing down, pulling up, and really forcing yourself to mentally even just make those cues to the right or to the left, and then both again. But you can use those same mental cues to really kind of put that all together. And it is important to kind of revisit these and go back and kind of think about them, so that you have them in your mind, especially as you get into getting back into work like this week, like we have here, coming back to mixed drills. Anytime you have, a big race or a big workout coming up, some of those spin ups or even single leg stuff as you cool down or warm up could be very, very useful.
So the other topic that came up is standing on the bike. Some of our riders are having difficulty standing because we do have some of the workouts with intervals that we practice standing. So when you stand, the upper body must stabilize against a stronger push and pull with the legs. And so the arms and torso can actively assist by moving the bike sideways. Now, if you're in a trainer, that's a little different, right? Because the bike is not moving underneath you. You might have a little bit of movement if you have a trainer such as the Neo or if you're on rollers. But that's the idea when you're outside. So if you don't do it often, standing will feel quite difficult and uncoordinated. But it's like any skill. With practice, you can improve it. So the things to keep in mind when you're doing it, and I'll explain here in a second. But what it takes for a rider to be able to stand and ride standing on the bike is upper body strength. But even more important than upper body strength is core, because core is really what connects an active upper body with the working legs. So you could even have not as a strong upper body, but a strong core and be able to stand on a bike. The opposite is probably not true. So even if you have a strong upper body, but your core is weak, then chances are you're going to have a problem standing up. So practice, practice, practice. As you stand up, the position would be to have your chest over your handlebars, and your elbows are in, your core is engaged. And as you go right, left, pedaling, standing, you should drop the weight on the pedal. So you drop on the right, drop on the left. So you're not holding yourself with your arms. I think the first inclination is to hold ourselves up on the bars and to be able to pedal standing. But really the force should be the weight of your body on your pedals.
Right.
Yeah, that is important. And the other part of that too is you have to know how to get out of the saddle and shift your gears. One of the mistakes I've seen a lot, and this is from people, a lot of times you come from a spin class background, they won't shift. They'll be in the cadence or a gear where they're pushing 80 to 90 RPMs, and then they come out of the saddle. Well, there's not enough resistance in the pedals because they're having to bear your weight. There's not enough resistance in the drivetrain, and it makes it very difficult and uncoordinated. So my technique is normally I do a 1 or 2 gear shift unless I'm in the middle of a climb. So it's a quick pop, and then I'm out of this, and then I'm out of the saddle. So there is sufficient resistance in the drivetrain immediately upon my stand that I don't have to worry about spending a ton of energy and just stabilizing myself.
That's very important.
Yeah. And key here too is a lot of times people will do that gear change and they end up getting up, and instead of maintaining the power that they were at, for example, let's say they were at, just below threshold, you'll see them spike up in this huge jump as they get out of the saddle. And that's not something we're looking for. Really, you'd like to get up and really try to maintain that wattage that you're kind of focusing on, so that it's a nice, constant, smooth movement up. And then you stay in that gear, you sit down, and then you change the gears back down to the 2, and you get back down to where you're at. So that transition is very important. As you change the gears, you get yourself up off the saddle, you pedal, and you sit down, you get your you slow down the cadence there, and then you switch the gears again. That way it's a very smooth, there's not these big drops as you get up and stand up. Yeah, that's just kind of putting you back in the hole.
And especially when you're standing to seated, and you, like you said, you sit down first and then you shift. As you shift, you have to keep the power in the chain, keep the chain, right? Keep the power in the chain and drivetrain, so you're keeping that torque.
Absolutely.
Well, and there's really, only 3 instances to change your position. One is you need to change your position to stretch or whatnot, right? Or, so like if you're doing a long sustained climb, you probably want to go up and down, just to stretch out the body, use different muscles and give your body a little break. The other one is to launch an attack / sprint, right? So you're going to get out of the saddle because you need to put that extra power. You want the extra weight power in there on the pedals to get you moving forward faster, because you can accelerate faster generally by pushing more out of the saddle. The third instance would be that you're going up a really steep climb, and if you stay seated, you're going to fall over because you just can't put enough power into the pedals and keep going. So those are really the only 3 instances. So you need to figure out, what am I trying to do? And if it's to change position, what Taya just said is real key. If you're just changing position and you're trying to stay steady, you have to know how to do that, especially if you're riding in a group. The most frustrating thing I've ever seen is when I'm riding in a group up a climb and some idiot stands up and throws their bike back into me, or behind me throws their bike up into me.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating. So you have to really get that down. And if you can learn how to transition smoothly, then it's a great way to get up, out, down, check out your opponents if you're in a race, make them think that you're feeling good if you're not, or make them wonder if you're going to attack. And you can come back down, and you go back up, and you come back down. It allows you to to have more options of when you decide to attack, because if you only come out of the saddle to attack, everybody knows he's coming out of the saddle or she's coming out of the saddle. It's an attack.
Yeah. And a lot of times that is the card that a lot of riders play. They are typically in a spot, that spot where they're either tired or they need that relief. And so that's where they're standing up, or they're trying to kind of get on top of things so that they can kind of pull away. So it kind of gives away that. So in that first thing, this is a skill that could be very, very useful. I know I do remember spending time with Ian here doing the couple climbs that we had here in California, the first being 40 minutes, the second being about the same. And the groups that we were kind of leading or kind of bringing up, we were kind of, Ian and I were doing kind of standing drills. Everyone else was kind of just suffering. But it definitely kind of plays mental games on the people that you're with. You're like, wait, are we going faster? Oh no, we're staying the same speed. Oh, but we're standing and we're sitting and we're kind of working on that. But it definitely can be used as something when you're in a group to be able to kind of throw people off kind of mentally, like, kind of what's coming up next. But a great, great skill to have in the bag. All right. So it looks like we've got all the standing leg. We talked about standing, one leg drills, and kind of, left, right balances here as far as skills. Really good topics here to kind of touch on for this, this recovery week, or this week that we're trying to kind of just pull everything together. So really quick, before we jump on, I just want to let everybody know that this podcast is actually brought to you by us, the coaches of the Endurance Lab. And this is where you can train smart, learn more, and get results. Our labs are specifically designed to help you achieve your structured training goal with a group of cyclists and triathletes working towards the same or similar goals. And remember, in the lab, you have direct access to certified coaches, that's us, and experts in various aspects of endurance training. You will also learn from your own peers going through the same lab as you, and will have access to our exclusive forum. We use online training tools and cycling platforms like Training Peaks, Zwift, and Trainer Road to help facilitate this interaction. So head over to endurancelab.fit if you haven't yet, and check out and see when the next lab begins. And we actually have a really exciting announcement about that. So back to the show here. We're gonna go ahead and jump over to, let me jump back up here. Where am I at?
That's to me. We're going to talk about some of the requests from Andrea.
Yeah, I'm like, where is it at? There it is. Okay. All right. There was, because I got thrown off. Is it Andrea's topic or yours? So go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, no worries. Andrea actually brought this up in our multi-sport side, the enlightened side of the forum. And there's a couple different things. One is a lot of us have to swim in areas that the water's not exactly warm, especially this time of year when you're doing the open water swim. And I had this when I raced in Santa Barbara one time when I lived in California, and I got out and I just had ice blocks for feet, and it was horrible. And I don't think my feet thawed out until the run. And so there's some questions about that of how you can deal with this. And, I've learned there's a couple different things. One is a lot of times people will get in, and I used to do this. I would just crank down the strap on my shoes. So I'd keep my shoes really tight. Well, as my feet started to expand as they would warm up, and as the blood was going to them as I was pushing, I was actually cutting off the ability of them to heat up or warm up because the circulation was being cut off. So one is watch your shoe tightness. I don't ever crank down my straps anymore. Sometimes actually I'll put them in there and my straps are pretty loose until maybe I'll go 40 or 50 miles in and tighten it down a little bit once I think my feet are about swelled as they're going to get. The second part is you can change insoles. So in my tri shoes, I have, because I'm racing in hot weather right now, I have an insert to them that's really porous. So it allows a lot of airflow through to help dry my feet off and keep them cool. Because obviously I'm swimming in the Caribbean and then I'm racing in 90-degree temperatures. Yeah. I'm not really worried about ice block feet.
Exactly.
But other places, so the other places I have raced, when I raced in Australia, it was really cool that morning and it was cool air. When I did some races other places, I've had a similar instance, and I might change the insole to a closed insole or a solid insole that doesn't allow the same airflow. And that's going to help retain some of the heat from my feet as I start pedaling and help them warm up. And likewise on that, what I plan on doing when I race in Denmark is I'm going to put booties on my shoes, the little toe booties, because it's going to be 58 or 59 degree water, which is absolutely horrible. I don't understand why that exists. And then it's going to be in like the low 60s when we start, which again, I think is absolutely horrible in freezing weather.
Low 60s. Oh my goodness.
Oh
so
man.
cold.
Yeah.
No. The air temperature will be probably about 62 or 63, which is that's Arctic. I mean, let's face it, that's freezing. So we don't really believe in that in our family. But so those are the different things I'm going to do to help mitigate the issues from the cold. Now, the other part we had up in the forum was when you get off the bike, a lot of people talk about they feel like their legs are puffy or dead, or they're just not really in a good spot with their legs. And this can be not only just coming off the bike, but even like right when we start a recovery run, when we've had a hard week. And a lot of times what I'll find is that I have to just let my body get through it. And unfortunately, there's not a good way to get around that. In a race, what I found that I do is I will take the first minute probably a lot harder than you would think, because if your legs feel like garbage, sometimes that first minute of pushing them pretty hard, once I get out of transition and get out on the road, it wakes them back up, and then I'll settle back in. But if right after that minute they don't immediately start feeling good, then I dial it way back and start trying to let them warm back up into it. What I found is, especially after long rides, for the longer races, I almost have to warm my legs up for running. Even though the muscles are warm from the bike, I've been in a one position for a long time though. So there's certain muscle fatigue that has happened. And as I transition to a new body position and using different muscles that may not have been used as much during the bike, I have to kind of let those warm up to the point where they can deal with the more fatigued muscles that have been working on the bike. So they kind of have to learn how to compensate a little bit. And that's something that takes a lot of time and practice. And honestly, it's just getting out and doing the brick workouts after these long rides. I mean, nobody wants to get off their bike after 100 miles and run unless it's their race. But you just have to do it because your body has to learn how to do it. And you don't need to run for 10 miles afterwards, but it's that 10 to 15 minute quick break afterwards to just get your body accustomed to it. The other part too is if you're riding in a race, regardless whether it's flat, unless you have a lot of practice doing these 120, 150 mile rides, 110 mile rides, you need to change position. Because once you get set in that one position, you sit there for a couple hours. It's almost as if you were sitting on your leg or leaning on your arm on the couch watching TV. You get that sleeping limb kind of feeling. It's not necessarily the tingly, but everything got adjusted to that. And if you move out of that position, the body just kind of rebels and doesn't know what to do. So that's why you'll get some of these feelings when you get off the bike and try to get for the run, like your legs just won't work. Sometimes you just have to fight through it, and sometimes you have to dial it back. There's, like I said, not a right answer for everybody. It's just the way you have to do it. And the last question that we had was about getting your breathing under control in the run leg. Yeah, this is another one that is difficult because a lot of us overcook the bike, or you get off the bike and you just hammered it in and now you're trying to get through the run. Well, this is the time in transition is when you have to really take care of this. And I've been victim of it myself, where I'm going and focused on getting through transition so fast, I'm not trying to relax myself. And so I've gotten out on the run and I feel like I have a tight chest and I'm like, I want to run naked because I just can't. This tri-top is just too tight. I just want to take off my clothes.
Oh my gosh.
But obviously I didn't do that as much as I wanted to. But you have to actually get off. When you get off the bike, the first thing I teach myself, or I get myself to do now, is as I'm off the bike and I'm starting to run with it, I take some deep breaths. If you can do 6 consecutive deep breaths and relax while you're going through your transition, your body will change its state. Your body will start recovering. And this is why I'm a big advocate of really practicing transition over and over and over until you have it down, because everyone goes, oh, I've got this, I'm good at transition, I've done it once, I've raced 100 times. But if you're not accustomed to doing it, if you don't have your routine, you're tired. And when you get into transition, even if it's only a short race, you're still tired. You have to do it. You're falling back on your training. You're not going to do something that you're not used to doing if you haven't been practicing it. You're not going to go into transition, the second transition, go, okay, even though I don't do this ever, let me go ahead and do this now for the first time, or the first time in 6 or 7 months. So that's why you have to really work on that. And that if you get out of T2 with your breath not under control, your breath is not going to come under control until you really switch off and dial off the pace. And actively try to get under control. And it's much harder to do that when you're running, vice when you're going through transition. You have to stop while you rack your bike and you put your shoes on. And you're doing all these other things that should be an automated process at that point. You shouldn't even have to think about it. And that's why you can think about getting your breath under control, getting that drink of water. I need to put in get my nutrition going again. So those are the big things I think that'll help a lot of people out when you start looking at making these processes automated. And so you don't have to focus on getting your breath under control when you're a K into the run. It'll be under control before you get out there.
So can we talk a little bit about the breathing? Because that's also helpful for cycling, especially when we are in those hard intervals and VO2, et cetera. Mm-hmm. The most effective way to breathe when you are doing those hard efforts is to focus on long exhales. So this is because then you're emptying your diaphragm and then the inhales happen automatically. So focus on long exhales. I find it when I heard that, and I heard that not too long ago, that's what I should be focusing on. It helped me tremendously because I tend to breathe very heavily. And when people said to me, focus on your breathing, inhale slowly, exhale slowly, that never worked for me because the inhale I was feeling like I was grasping for even more air. But the exhales, doing that long exhale really helps. And belly breathing too. If you need to calm yourself down, let's say you're nervous before the start of a race, or you're in transition, like Ian said, that belly breathing, the air is really coming from your tummy in and out. Your tummy rises and lowers instead of chest breathing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we've had our share.
That's perfect.
Yeah, we've had our share of live FTP tests here at the Pain Cave, and reminding people, you'd be surprised, people will be 10, 12, 15 minutes into a test, and you'll have to look at somebody and be like, do not hold your breath. Do not hold your breath. Like, breathe. And they'll gasp like, breathe out. And it starts cueing. Things just start turning off when things get dark. And it's funny to see it as a third person, and you don't think you're doing it yourself, but you're just taking these short, really kind of tight breaths, and you really need to make sure that you're breathing out and just constantly making that sound. You hear weightlifters do this. You hear a lot of people with like huge efforts, they'll big breaths out to get the body ready, for a big movement. So definitely.
No, and so Taya's son is a pretty strong swimmer, a pretty good swimmer. And I know he probably has the same thing in swimming. And that's one of the things they teach you in swimming is you don't hold your breath when you're swimming. You're exhaling. So when you roll to breathe, you open your mouth. It's an autonomic nervous reaction of you automatically take in the air. You open your mouth and be like, so you suck it in quick, and then you're breathing it out. As you're going through your strokes, and then as soon as you roll over, open your mouth, you suck in the air right away. So I mean, it's something that you have to do, and this is going to sound weird, but coming from me, you guys are probably used to that. One of the things you can do if you need to practice this, maybe don't do it while streaming, and maybe don't do it if you have neighbors and thin walls in an apartment building. But when you're pushing on these efforts and you need to practice this belly breathing or the long exhales, make noise. Make a noise. Or you can sing too if you want to do that. I wouldn't recommend that if you're streaming unless you're really good. But you can actually sit there and noise, and it can be simple of so you're forcing yourself to count it and get it out there. Again, you're gonna sound like a freak, but do you care?
Yeah, I mean, along with everything else that we do, right?
Right. I would say don't do this in the hotel gym, or if you're riding on the spin bike. You might get committed, but at home you can probably get away with it.
Yeah. All right. We're going to go ahead and shift on over to On the Horizon, where we talk about what's coming up in the lab, workout-wise, or just kind of generally here. So Taya, what do we've got as we get back into the tent city for the last couple weeks of this performance lab?
Exciting workouts coming up. Legs should be feeling pretty good. Mentally, you should be fresh and hungry for more workouts. So we're going to start the week with the long grind workout, which is simulating long climbs with cadence changes. So it's a variation of the short grinds, that everybody absolutely loved that JFlow developed here. So this time, because you loved it so much, we're going to do it longer.
Yeah. There's a couple more variations there. I'm excited to see what everybody feels about the second one here.
And I'll probably be doing that one in the Zwift workout module on Thursday next week. Yeah.
Nice.
And then we have the endurance lab, the VO2, some VO2, the 335s, classic VO2, very effective, 3 minutes on, 3 minutes off, 5 times. Great chance to practice your breathing there that we just talked about. Then we have a fast group simulation, fast group ride simulation. That one incorporates a little bit of everything. So you have VO2, you have sweet spot, you have threshold, continuous efforts there with tempo in between. And we close the week with a tempo block, a longer ride with some tempo work in there, a little bit more stimulating than the other tempo workouts that we have been doing the past couple of weeks as the lab progresses here.
I think with that, I just did the fast group ride yesterday, and it's definitely is deceiving. It's got some zone 2 recovery. It's got some really high level sprints. It takes a little bit of adjusting to get to those right powers. There's a sprint at the very beginning that's pretty much all out that you need to prepare for. Zone 2 recovery in between that. And then a 1 minute VO2 section that you need to just get the gearing right so that you are pushing that wattage. And then it all finishes up with sweet spot for 5 minutes after all of that, and it is just grinding, and you're just waiting for that 5-minute rest to happen so you can recover. So it's a good workout. So definitely looking forward to that.
And watch the video too on the that we're going to post this weekend on the rides for this week with some more tips for those.
Awesome. We have some stuff coming up. I know we're trying to build some topics in the Endurance Lab forum, right, as well?
That's right. So we are building up not only the topics for the private sections of the group where only members can read and post, but also the open sections where we have several topics. So that's going to be expanding here.
Excellent. So yeah, so just remember that there's 2 sides of that forum. So it's got for those that are in the lab to check the sections that are outside of the section that you're in to be able to see all those topics. And so moving forward, as we come into our 7th and 8th week of the lab, we are actually on the coach's side preparing for the next lab. And what we've named it is actually the Power Lab. And this actually starts on May 28th. It's an 8-week targeted training session. If you haven't done a lab with us before, these are easily slotted in depending on where you are in your season. But this specific Power Lab is actually designed to prepare athletes to participate in all different events, not just one or the other or indoor or outdoor stuff. It's actually, its emphasis is intensity at threshold and VO2 max. For those that have been in the lab before, you're gonna see more and longer VO2 max efforts and a lot of over-under threshold work where we'll be stepping away a little bit from aerobic endurance, but we're not gonna lose sight of that kind of base and building from that as far as doing tempo work and sweet spot stuff. That'll all be in there so that you still have that muscular endurance for your rides, but we've built that in the previous labs and you can kind of jump in and move forward from that into the higher VO2. So essentially this is translating into workouts that combine multiple abilities in single sessions. Here in the lab, we talk about layers of different things that you learn where you're not just working on one thing. You may be working on 2 or 3 skills during each workout. And so that's what we offer there. So each athlete essentially is prepared for all the demands during these events and you're using your time super wisely. We know your time is valuable, so we want to make sure you get the most out of that. So essentially, with athletes that train indoors, especially exclusively during this period, you'll also still benefit from this lab, but you're still able to take these workouts just like any of the other lab ones. You're able to take these outdoor as well and kind of work with those things. So just a real quick rundown of what it includes. It's an 8-week training plan with custom bike workouts where the bike files are compatible with Zwift, Training Peaks, your Garmin. There's also going to be strength workouts that you can do with little or no equipment needed. You'll have direct access to certified cycling and triathlete coaches, sport nutrition experts, mental skills education, and then weekly presentations like the Coaches Corner here and all throughout the forum, just to understand the training metrics and what's going on. Of course, tips on your activities and that sort of thing. We also offer some other products that allow you kind of more access to the coaches as well. And then, of course, motivation and support from really a supportive group community of athletes really from all over the world supporting you getting through the lab. So super exciting time. If you enjoyed the labs that we're in now, or just want to jump in and you're in this part of the season where you're trying to build power and trying to get towards your AA race, this is really going to be where it's at. So we're building that now. And as soon as that kind of goes out, it is available as purchase on endurancelab.fit. So definitely check that out there for now. So reaching over to Tan, Ian, anything else for today's Coaches Corner, you guys?
No, it's going to be a fun last 2 weeks. We've got a lot on there that's going to bring up the intensity, both on the cycling side and the multi-sport side. So I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And people do have races coming up. So exciting to see those and some trips. Taya, how about you?
Keep those comments coming. Our forum has been great. We have a lot of participation, and so looking forward to the following weeks.
Absolutely. And from me, from the coaches, I want to thank you for joining us today in the Coaches Corner. If it's your first time listening and you'd like to hear more about the content from the Endurance Lab, head over to your favorite podcast app and search The Endurance Lab, or head over to YouTube and search the same and click subscribe. For more information on when the next lab is, like we talked about at the Power Lab, head over to endurancelab.fit, where you can learn and you can join us to train smart, learn more, and get results. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.